Welcome to another edition of the Devy Delight, brought to you by ExpandTheBoxScore.com. I am your host, Ricky Valera. On today's episode, we're going to talk about some late-round sleepers that you'll be able to draft in your upcoming rookie drafts. We tackled a lot of the guys in the round 1 through 3 that we liked last week, but this week we're going to tackle some of the guys that we were drafted in the later part of the draft that we think that you could utilize in maybe this season and even in further seasons. As always, I am joined by my partner in crime here, Stoops. How are you today, bud?
I'm doing great. I'm tweeting out the link. So I'm doing good. Unfortunately, I went back to work yesterday. Well, fortunately, but unfortunately, right? I had that conversation with a couple of the guys a couple of people who got, furloughed. They asked how it was when we were still there, yada, yada, yada. But went back to work yesterday. It was busy like I expected, but excited to dive deep into this today. We had a guy on Twitter come to us and, kind of give us the idea and we ran with it. So we figured it's still draft season. So something we can definitely dive into, and then we'll get back into the Devy aspect of everything. But excited to touch base on this one more time, give out some names we like in those later rounds, and just, see what we can do to help you out in your rookie drafts.
Yeah, for me, this is like what would you call it? Maybe a farewell. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's we've been talking about some of these guys since August. We're ready to kind of pack up this draft and move on, but we understand at the same time, like we said, we're trying to do what some of the viewers out there, which we appreciate a whole lot. This has been a crazy busy week for us as far as the podcast is going. We went live a lot. We went to a couple different places. We're trying some new stuff out, and we can't thank you guys enough for listening to us and consistently putting us in your ears, whether it's via podcast or you're watching us live. It's a pretty amazing thing for you guys to do week in and week out, Soups.
I agree. And yeah, we're trying to go in different aspects of things, doing the mock drafts. We never done the video thing before, and then I went on to Trade Addicts podcast. They had this. We went on to Open Bar. They had this, and it was kind of like, maybe that's a good idea. And even if we never went live with it, we could at least see each other and communicate in a different way. So it's been fun though. We got a lot of stuff going on. I know you've got some stuff up your sleeve you're working on that I'm going to help out with on my end, and I'm going to kind of go the same route with a different area. So.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it.
But not a spoiler.
Yeah, exactly. Can't really dive really too deep into it, but at the same time,
there's some stuff coming.
Yeah, there's some different stuff coming. This is exciting. I feel like now that we have this video aspect of it, but at the same time, we do appreciate the people listening via podcasting as well. But there's a lot of different aspects that we can enhance our show in the near future that better plan ourselves for the 2021 draft. You know what I mean? There's a lot of, it's exciting. We don't know what's in store for us, but hopefully even if we get football fan list stands, we don't really care. We just want some football. That's all we really care about.
I saw this one real quick. I saw this one thing again. I should start reading the articles, right? I saw the article, and it basically said that the SEC commissioner, I think it was the commissioner, someone amongst the SEC said that they're playing football no matter what. Again, titles of articles can be very misleading. You know what I mean? But I just found that interesting that that's even remotely like a thing. So I don't know if that means, to me, that would mean, okay, we're going to play no matter what. No fans kind of thing. Like, we're just going to play. Again, when I see these articles that intrigue me, I really should read them so I can share the full information. But it was kind of in passing. I was getting ready for a draft, and I was like, oh, I'll come back later. And of course, it's always gone. So I don't know. I just found that interesting.
I agree 100%. I'm excited to see if they're really going to, check that, really check the boxes, and whether like I said, whether it's full of fans or whether it's with nobody in the stands. I really just want football. I mean, obviously, we're both concerned with more of the safety aspect of everything first, but then we'll go from there. I want to send us a little special shout out real quick to our good friend Andrew Harbaugh real quick. Head on over to his Twitter account right now, at Andrew NFL Draft, and download his new 2020 NFL Fantasy Guide. It's really, really, really cool. 46 player reports and overall big board, positional rankings, monthly updates. If you download the guide, he's not even asking for any monetary a value for right now. He's just asking you to donate to some amazing charities that he has lined up in this book. Andrew does amazing work in pretty much everything that he does. I mean, this guy he pumps out the material. I don't even know how he does it half the time. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So please check it out, download it. If you're capable enough to donate a little something to the charities that he had selected, please do so. But most importantly, support the guy. And I took a little peek of it. I haven't read through the entire thing yet, but it looks pretty in depth and pretty detailed. I like the way it looks. What about you?
Yeah, I did the same. I took a little peek into it, a couple pages in. Got to the player, essentially player profile portion where he really broke down the players, and he went in depth with it. It was his thoughts, measurables. It was, I mean, you name it. Like it was a pretty in-depth aspect of it, and he did that for a lot of the players. So he put a lot of work into it. So like you said, a lot of good charities on there that he's got with. He said he even partnered with Andy. Yep. A lot of the fire departments up there. They've got some charities going to help, different people around. So great cause behind it. But yeah, absolutely. If you're able, right, you know what I mean? If you're able to donate something, anything helps. So yeah, definitely go check him out. It's a good thing that he put a lot of work into, and it's going to a good cause as well.
I agree 100%. I was excited about it, and I told him prior, whenever he was going to do it, we were going to do a little something, but then he decided to just release it for free. So that was even cooler. Yeah. But all right, folks. So as we talked about, we had a listener talk to us and ask us to talk about some sleepers in the upcoming draft. Stoops and I tried to get the guys that are not able to be drafted in that round one of your draft. You have your prototypical guys 1 through 12 there, and even your maybe second round is kind of, unless you're in the back half of the second round, maybe you could take one of these guys, and knowing that in that third round, you're not going to get them, but this is a third, fourth round type sleepers. Some of the guys we're going to talk about, we have done a little bit of research. Stoops and I have really talked about understanding and learning the entire contract status of guys that they're going to be competing against and stuff like that. So Stoops, go ahead and kick us off with your sleeper quarterback that you want to talk about.
Yeah, so my sleeper quarterback is the guy that I've probably talked about more in the past couple weeks than I did all through the Devy season. But it's Jacob Eason. I still am a believer, and I love the landing spot, right? We talked about that before. He's obviously not a year one guy, right? They brought in Phillip Rivers. He's the guy this year. But he's only on a 1-year deal. So he's essentially done after the season now. Will he perform amazingly? And then they say, hey, let's bring you back for another year? Maybe. That is completely possible, right? But then you even look at it like with Jacoby Brissett, he's essentially on the last year of his deal, from what I looked at it. And so really the door's open, right? The problem's going to be Jacob Eason's not going to be on the field to essentially show if he's capable of being the guy or not. So it's going to be one of those where I still think it's going to be a long-term play. He's going to be the guy to they're going to go with him eventually, I think, but he's going to have to win that job in camp, most likely with whoever they bring in. But when you look at it college-wise, I mean, 64.4 completion percentage for this most recent season. That was 26th in the entire NCAA. So not you love to see a guy, I looked at it, right? Joe Burrow, I believe, was number one, and he had the most or second most pass attempts or something. It was insane. But Jacob Eason had a pretty solid completion percentage for his 404 pass attempts, over 3,100 yards, 23 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. So he, amongst all of those numbers, he ranked anywhere in the top 25 to top 30. So he was consistent with it, right? He wasn't definitely a lower tiered guy. He wasn't someone who excelled in one area but was terrible in another. He was kind of middle of the road with it, I guess, which isn't a terrible thing. But when you look at it, right, you look at his college targets, who he had to throw to. Realistically, he had Aaron Fuller and Hunter Bryant. No disrespect to the other guys on the field. They are D1 athletes. They are out there. They are much better than I am, right? But at the same time, when you look at it transitioning to the NFL, I mean, T.Y. Hilton, who could or could not be gone very soon. Obviously, Michael Pittman, Paris Campbell, Jack Doyle, Trey Burton, Marlon Mack out of the backfield, Jonathan Taylor. They even got Darius Fountain. Those names right there trump the names that he played with in college, right? And that's just how it goes. It's the NFL now. That's just how it works. But at the same time, give him these targets, give him an NFL scheme, And we've said it before. This is all he's doing. He's a football player. He's got nothing else going on. He may have his side gigs, whatever. He may still. I'm not sure if he's already graduated. I think he has, but nonetheless, he may still have some school stuff that he's doing online. But anyway, football's his thing. So to have the time to do that, even in the times that we're in, I think he's going to transition well. I think the fact that he's able to sit behind technically 2 vet quarterbacks, if you really want to go that aspect, but one that's been in the league for much, much longer. And Phillip Rivers, honestly, I think he's one that's been undervalued his entire career. Yep. I think he's always been, people go that late round quarterback, he's
always that guy. Yeah. He's always the guy every year.
Phillip Rivers is the guy that a lot of people go with, but they never praise him for what he does. Yes, look at his numbers last year. He threw 23 touchdowns and 20 interceptions. But the crazy thing is, and I'll say this, people have downed Rivers, right, for it, but like they're all over Winston. And maybe it's because Winston's young, he's still got some time. Rivers is kind of at the end. I don't know. But it's like nobody's knocking Rivers for that necessarily. So I think Jacob Eason having the opportunity to sit behind a vet quarterback like that, I think is going to do him wonders. I think it's going to really, really help him. And we've even said that about many other guys. Being able to sit behind veteran quarterbacks, learn the systems, learn the game, right? You've been playing football basically your whole life, unless you're one of those few that say, oh, it's my junior year of high school, I'm going to go try it. And now you're in the NFL.
Do an AGG.
Yeah, that's more so, I think, at a skill position or, a defensive, lineman, linebacker, but you still got to be a talent to do it. But anyway, playing football your whole entire life, the game, you understand the concept of it, and you've learned as you've gone, right? You learned a couple things in high school, learned more in college. The NFL is a whole different ball game. So to be able to learn from a quarterback who's been around for, 15, 18 years, I think it's 17 years. I'm not even sure really how long he's been, but it's been a long time. He's definitely seen different types of offenses. He's seen transitions in the game, where it's run, to where it's a pass, to where it changes and evolves. So to be able to share Rivers' knowledge with Eason, I think is going to be huge. He was drafted in the 4th round. Eason was, so that kind of shows me that there is some form of belief in him. Yes, it's not a top 2, top 3 rounds even, but it was mid. He was 16th overall in the 4th round. So let's call it a mid 4th round pick there. And I think that'll help him as well, as long as he can go into camp, stay clean, show he's got the arm for it. He's got the mind for it. So the biggest thing I think is going to be the work ethic. Definitely you want to stay film study the playbook. Whenever they ask you the questions, answer it confidently, and this is not stuff that he needs to know, right? Obviously, but I think it speaks volumes. It's the stuff we don't see. We just see what's going to be done in practice and games. But Jacob Eason's the guy that I think you should definitely be keeping an eye on. In my Trade Addicts League, we're actually almost finished. We're in the 4th round still, but Jacob Eason went at 307. Jacob Eason went 307 in my in the rookie draft for the Trade Addicts 3 league. So and that's about what I would have expected, about a third round pick that you could get Eason for. And I think that right there, if you've got the roster spots, whether it be taxi squads or even just your active roster, if you've got the spots to stash him for a little while, if you can get him in the 3rd round, I think that would be I don't want to call it a steal because that's where I expected him to go anyway. But at the same time, he's still that late round guy. Because we've said it, most rookie drafts are going to be 4 to 5 rounds. Ours happens to be 5. But if you can get him in the late 3rd round, like I'd get him every time if I could at that price.
Yeah, it's a heck of a price for him. And, I'm going to transition and talk about a guy that we talked about a lot on this podcast, and that's Jake Fromm. He was drafted in the 5th round, 22nd overall. We saw a free-for-all from him that was quite interesting to watch happen. Mm-hmm. So many other quarterbacks were taken ahead of him. I don't have the number in front of me, but I know it was like 8 or 9 or something like that were taken ahead of him. There was a lot of quarterbacks being taken in front of Jake Fromm, and there were so many question marks of why, right? He's 6'2", 220. He didn't have the best season, okay? Whenever he was coming into his senior year, you kind of want to see him take that next step. You want him to see, but the weird thing about it is what a lot of times you see coaches step up to the plate and you watch them let their quarterback kind of sling the ball in a year of which they probably know they're going to leave, right? They never really took any chances. Now, they did throw the ball more last year than they ever had before, but he still only threw the ball like 385 times last year, which really, in the grand scheme of things, it's really not a whole lot whenever you're talking about, college football and how often in the SEC and stuff like that. And I'm just doing some quick math here, 385 divided by 14, 27 times per game. That's all.
I love how we both did the exact same thing at the same time. It's awesome.
But to me, that's not a lot. That's just that, in college football, that's definitely not a lot. I mean, you're throwing the ball a lot compared to just throwing Anthony Gordon's name out there. 680 sometimes he threw the ball last year. Even Burrow threw the ball over 600 times. So you had guys throw the ball over 200 more times. Yes, was he a little more inaccurate this year? Yeah, his completion percentage went down 7%, 7% down to 60.8, which is something that is somewhat alarming, something that you don't like to see. The thing about it is I think the talent's there, right? For me, some of the things that stand out whenever you talk about Jake Fromm, his red zone stats are phenomenal. You know what I mean? He's got a 57% completion ratio, but we talked about that. I'd rather him throw it away than throw interceptions, but he had 17 touchdowns and 0 picks in the red zone last year. That, to me, is a phenomenal stat in itself right there. I think the talent is there, right? They didn't invest that much draft capital in there, but they have Matt Barkley as the backup quarterback in Buffalo right now. No offense, guys. I don't know if you know the name, but Matt Barkley is not a very good quarterback. He's never going to be a starter in this league, okay? I really feel like he got hurt by the play calling, which is very, very questionable, okay? But there's some of the stats that I pulled out that I like that I just kind of nitpicked here and there. Versus top-ranked teams last year, 1,214 yards, 10 touchdowns, only 2 picks. And then the year before in 2018, he had 1,269 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 4 picks. If you look at his stats and if you go by his game log last year, okay, he struggled against LSU in the title game. But exactly, that's my point exactly. Everybody did. And then, of course, he struggled in the South Carolina game. That was a crazy wonky game. He threw the ball 51 times in that game. Mm-hmm. Between the 2 games versus LSU and the 2 games that they lost last year, the only 2 that they lost all of last year, he threw the ball 93 times, which is about – there was games – the Kentucky game, he threw the ball 12 times. Murray State, he threw the ball 11 times. Vanderbilt, 23 times. There were some games that they got so far ahead early that he didn't have to pass the ball a whole lot. But my point here is this, okay? So the problem that we had with Jake Fromm is this. So against Missouri, 13 of 29, 173 yards, 2 touchdowns. They won the game, but 44% completion ratio. Against Auburn, 46%. But he threw 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, but managed to only get 110 yards passing. Against Georgia Tech, 48% pass completion percentage, but threw 4 touchdowns. Like his stats were very wonky last year. And I think the talent around him was solid. They didn't even use DeAndre Swift completely right either. You know what I mean? We talked about that they didn't even use Swift to his fullest capabilities at Georgia. And Swift still, showcased what he could.
He still put up the numbers he put up. That's the crazy thing.
Last year, in 12 other games outside the 2 games that I just mentioned, Jake Fromm threw exactly 0 interceptions in those games. All 5 of his interceptions from last year came within those 2 games. Outside of that, he didn't throw another interception, which, you could talk about, he did throw the interception. I'm not saying that Jake Fromm is going to be the starting quarterback for the Buffalo Bills, but I'm not saying that that's not possible. I'm not saying Josh Allen is exactly the be-all, end-all. I buy – Stoops and I talked about this a little bit. I buy Josh Allen a little bit more than I ever did before going into this season. He impressed me. He made a couple crazy, weird plays in the playoff game. That was just some bonehead things, but that's not always going to be a Josh Allen thing, I don't think. He started all 16 games last year. The year before, he started 11, but I do think that he plays with a volatile quarterback mind as well. Josh Allen does. He does like to take the ball and tuck it and run. I mean, he was, I think, their leading rusher last year or close to it. And rightfully so. I mean, the guy's got some legs. The complete opposite of Fromm, which is another interesting thing, is because Fromm is not a guy that's going to go out there and make plays on his legs. But for me, we're maybe a Josh Allen hit away from Jake Fromm seeing the football field. Jake Fromm is going undrafted in most leagues, or he's going in that 4th or 5th round?
He went at 404.
Okay, so he went
in 404 in the Trade Addicts League.
Okay, so 404. At this particular point in the draft, you are just taking a flyer. Is Jake Fromm going to be the best quarterback in the NFL? No. Could he be out of the league in 3 years? Yes, as well. But the fact of the matter is you're taking a risk on a guy that could potentially, that does have upside to be a good NFL quarterback. And he does. We've talked about it. We've broken it down in depth. But if it's in round 4, what are you shooting at? You know what I'm saying? You're throwing darts at some guys that might not even see the field, that you're just not going to get productivity, and you can land a potential quarterback. Again, I don't love Jake Fromm. I don't love the landing spot, but at the same time, I do like that you can get him where you can get him in your rookie drafts, and you're taking a risk, a very low risk, at acquiring a decent future asset.
Yeah, I agree. I've been a Fromm fan, and I think he's definitely someone that you can get later in your rounds, and he could take the job at some point. But I'm a little bit more on the Allen side than what it feels like you are. But
no, I
also just traded for him, so it changes my mind. And
just traded for Josh Allen.
I did.
Oh, okay, well there you go. You need that Josh Allen to be good. All right, let's transition over to our running back. Who do you got, Stoops?
So the running back I have is one that you have been a big fan of, still are a big fan of, I believe. Benjamin went to Arizona, got drafted in the 7th round, 8th overall in the 7th round, so 222nd overall pick. You look at his college stats, man. He put up some numbers, right? Back in 2018, he had over 1,500 rushing yards, 15 touchdowns. He caught 33 passes on 41 targets for 247 yards and 2 touchdowns, kind of 84 first downs. Only had 1 fumble. Then you moved to 2019, had just over 1,000 yards. So definitely saw a reduced role in that rushing yard aspect of thing, 10 touchdowns on the ground. But he caught more passes, 43 catches on 54 targets. So they got him more involved in the passing game, which is definitely an amazing thing to see. 361 receiving yards is still only 2 touchdowns, 72 first downs. This is the problem that I have, and we always talk about this, right? And I know that others have brought up about Taylor and his fumbling issues. Benjamin fumbled the ball 6 times this year. It's a lot. That's 5 more than the previous year, right? Again, did he lose those fumbles? We don't know. Doesn't really matter in our eyes. It's a fumble is a fumble, but I think it's stuff that can get cleaned up. We've said that before, right? We've seen a lot of college running backs come in, man, that's a fumbling problem. And then they get to the pros and they fumble it once in 5 years, right? Yeah. So it's one of those things where it could be cleaned up. The pros have their training aspects that they really, instill into the running backs and make sure they hold on to that ball. So it's something that can get cleaned up. I'm not overly concerned with it, but it's still something to raise an eyebrow about. But I think he can fit into that Arizona offense amazingly. Yes, he's got Kenyon Drake there. He's got Chase Edmonds there. There's even DJ Foster there. So there's some running backs there that are definitely gonna compete for touches above him. And I think obviously Drake and Edmonds are going to be the 2 that are going to be on the field probably 90% of the time combined. So it's going to open up a little bit of playing time for Benjamin, but overall he's going to have to make do with what he's got, right? And I think that's how a lot of guys get it done. And I don't know if this will happen, but maybe they throw him in on, some special teams. He's able to showcase his abilities in that aspect as well. But the contract situation for Drake and Edmonds, Drake is basically on that 1 year, some form of a tender, thing that he signed. Yeah. So he's technically a free agent after the season. Do they rework a contract? I think so. Depending on what he wants, obviously. But Edmonds, he's basically going to be a free agent after the 2021 season, so he's still there for a little while, but he hasn't really broken out too much. He's done enough to keep his job and definitely keep a role in that offense, but I think Eno can come in and really start to make an impact. I think it's going to be again, just like Eason, right? It's going to be more of a long-term play. It's kind of where we're at, especially with these late round guys. You've got to just kind of look at the situations and see which ones you like a little bit more. And for me, Benjamin's in an offense that I really, really like. It's going to be high powered. It's going to be fast moving on the offensive side. They've made and the crazy thing is they've made some moves on the defensive side, which I think in turn helps the offense, right? It's going to get the ball back to the offense more. They're going to be able to get into a pretty good rhythm. And obviously when you add the best receiver, that's going to be, that's all about your opinion. A top 3 receiver in the league. I know Michael Thomas is probably number 1 for a lot of guys, and nonetheless, top 2, top 3 receiver and DeAndre Hopkins into that offense. I mean, that's going to pull pull defenders away from the backfield. So you give them a little dump off, let the running backs do their thing, or even give them a handoff. So I think Eno Benjamin can come in, make a good name for himself. And here's the thing. Even if he comes in and does what he can do and, put up big numbers, and Arizona, for whatever reason, doesn't, hold on to him after a couple years, as long as he goes to the right scheme, I think he can still make a name for himself. But I'm hoping that he makes a name for himself in Arizona, sticks there. Drake is, I wish I would have wrote it down. I think he's 26, 27?
Yeah, he's still
range.
young.
So he's still relatively young, but at the same time, he's kind of starting to get up to that age where a lot of NFL teams start to really look into. Put it this way, I don't think if Drake gets a contract, I don't think it's going to be longer than potentially a 2 to 3 year deal, and it's going to be more team friendly than anything. So I think that in turn could help Eno because he's so much younger, less touches, so on and so forth. But Eno Benjamin's a guy, and I actually just drafted him in the trade addicts. I keep going back to the trade addicts because it's a super flex league. It's what a lot of people play. It is a tight end premium, so things go a little bit different there. Shout out Adam Troutman, got him at 403. But Eno Benjamin, I got him at 406, right? So it's still one of those. So the guys that I've been talking about, and even from with you, it's been that 3rd to 4th round range, which is essentially going to be in your rookie drafts, those late round guys you're going to take that chance on. So Eno may be just a roster filler his whole career and, journeyman and get the job done, keep getting your contracts and so on and so forth. But I think he's someone that can get it done. Not a huge guy, right? Not a huge guy, but the fact that he had 277 rush attempts in 2018 and 253 rush attempts in 2019 shows he can handle the ball, right? He can take the amount of carries. Now, again, NFL linebackers, college linebackers, size, speed's a little bit different, taking that many hits, but he's a tough guy, man. We saw him down in Mobile. He's a tough guy. Like you said, life of the party, right? But what we said in a good way, I know that's used kind of sometimes in a not so good way, but no, he's just always having fun with it. So I think he's going to come in, make a name for himself. Definitely going to, I think the locker room's going to like him. I'm just excited to see what this Arizona offense does in general, but I'm excited to see how they get him involved as well.
Yeah, I think that he might be able to return some kicks for them too.
Yep.
I think that he's got the speed. He doesn't have that super big size, but at the same time, he's big enough to, or he's small enough to make some plays in the special teams in order to kind of secure that roster spot in the future as well. Mm-hmm. The guy that I want to transition into is LaMichael Pirine from Florida. He got drafted by the New York Jets, 4th round, 14th overall in the round, 120th overall. We all know Adam Gase and the Le'Veon Bell situation, right?
Yep.
Gase does not like Bell, and for some reason he didn't want that contract. Again, I don't know what Gase thinks. I don't know what goes through that dude's mind. I really don't. But the fact of the matter is this. After this season, if they cut Bell, they get $4 million in dead cap space, but at the same time, they save $9.5 million. We're not even 100% sure. This is my biggest, and I'll put the concern on the front half here. My biggest concern is if the Jets have another bad year, Gase is gone. Does the new regime buy into Pirine, even though he's only a 4th round pick? So I'll get that part out of the way. But the thing about it is Gase just drafted a 3-down back. LaMichael Pirine, I think, is a phenomenal talent. And I'll throw it off the top. He went 407 in our mock draft that we did on Monday. Okay, 4th round, 7th overall pick. That to me is insane value for a guy that I think is going to project to be the second back in this system, potentially even higher. I think that there could be some fluctuation. I think that he might be able to, as the season progressed, steal some carries away from Le'Veon Bell because of Gase. Like, there's a few questions I had in mind whenever you look at, when I talked about play calling, whenever you talked about Georgia, you talk about the play calling on the side of Florida. There was week 9, week 10, week 11, week 12, where Pirine saw 7 carries, 4 carries, 4 carries, 4 carries. Very interesting to see that. The one thing that I do love about his season, though, he had 40 catches last year. Mm-hmm. That, to me, is a huge uptick. He had 12 targets in the red zone. 12 targets in the red zone, 11 catches. He had 9 total touchdowns in the red zone this year. He had 9 touches on 3rd and short and medium, converted 7 of them into first downs. On first down carries, he averaged 7 yards per carry. Another amazing stat out of Michael Pirine. Okay, he had 11 total touchdowns last year. I think that they're going to be able to utilize him early and often in this offense. I like him. Again, the draft capital is not very high, but they weren't going to go out and reach for a running back in rounds 1 through 3. You didn't see it, especially since they have the money invested and they have needs elsewhere. So I like this draft pick a whole lot. I mean, P. Ryan does make plays, and he's not as flashy as some of these other guys. We talked about him a little bit in our on the podcast in the past. But the guy is catching balls, and he's going to be a 3-down back. He only has 493 carries in his career. He had 136, 134, 132. His yards per carry dipped this year, which was interesting to see. But like I said, it was interesting how they handed him the ball. He had so many games he never had a game with more than 17 carries last year. And the thing about it is that was only one game, and it was against LSU. He had 17 carries for 65 yards. He even threw a pass in that game. Just randomly tidbit there for you. But he had every single game that he played last year -2. He had multiple catches. I like that stat as well. If you're playing a PPR league, which I think a lot of the world is these days.
What's a standard league anyway?
Yeah, exactly. I would never play. I would never play in a standard league ever again. I just wouldn't. I have no interest in it. But for me, I think there's a lot to be said about LaMichael P. Ryan that he does good, and I like the value. Again, I talked about at the top of that talking about him. He's got the ability to play 3 downs. He's a pretty good pass blocker. He's pretty good in space. They can line him out wide as a receiver. He's going to catch some balls. 40 balls last year, and I think for his career, he caught. Again, there's one of those things that we talked about with Keyshawn Vaughn, right? Mm-hmm. He went into this season understanding that he needed to catch some balls. You have to go into your final season showcasing yourself and able to catch the ball out of the backfield because you have to be a 3-down back in this league, right? He had 40 catches last year. He had 32 in the 3 previous years combined. You know what I mean? So that to me is something that you really see an uptick in volume from him. So I think this is a no-brainer steal for me. Maybe the back half of 3, knowing you're not going to get him in 4 if you're only in 4-round drafts. But P. Ryan, I don't see why he's going so low. And maybe as people continue to talk about him, he starts to go up the draft boards a little bit. But right now, if you're doing a rookie draft, if he can be had in that late 3rd round, early 4th round, you're stealing a very good talent that has a lot of potential.
He went at 312.
312. Exactly.
In the Trade Addicts League. So you are correct.
Exactly. So it's a steal. That's a steal for a guy that's going to be your second running back. Or the second running back on the Jets. That's a steal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%.
Right.
I wish I could have got him. I had the 403, so I was close, but I didn't get him. He went before that.
Give us the receiver you're going to talk about, Captain.
The receiver I'm going to talk about, and you know I had to bring him up. You know I did. Yep. It's Courtney Davis out of Minnesota now. I'm still a huge believer in his talent. I've been watching him amongst other, obviously, A&M receivers for many, many years now. His numbers are not flashy, right? He does not have those numbers that you look at and you're like, oh my God, like this guy's an absolute stud. He's one that you have to watch the film on. And I've said this before, for years, I was a numbers guy. And I promise you, if I look at the numbers here, they are not awful, right? So like 2018, 558 receiving yards, 7 touchdowns. He did have 3 rush attempts for 14 yards. 2019, he had 53 receptions, 612 receiving yards, and only 4 touchdowns with 5 rush attempts for 32. So you look at that as a blanket statement, right? And you're kind of just like, man, I don't know. Like it just doesn't strike me, right? So go watch the film. You're going to see what he's capable of. You're going to see the footwork. You're going to see his hands. You're going to see basically he can create the separation. You're going to see a bunch of things that the numbers aren't going to tell you. And that's the biggest thing I've learned is numbers don't tell the whole story. But at the same time, film doesn't tell the whole story, right? The reason I say watch the film for him, and it's funny I keep doing this, right? Because all those Jordan Love truthers, well, watch this film. To me, Kellen Mond did him no justice, right? I think Kellen Mond had a lot of things he needed to work on that did not help his receivers at all. But that's a different conversation for another day. But I think that's why Davis's numbers dipped a little bit, right? It was just kind of technically his receiving yards went up, but receiving touchdowns went down. Anyway, back to the current situation. So he got signed to undrafted free agent. So I think that's going to definitely make the road a little bit longer for him to get some touches on the field. But I think his abilities are going to get him up there. I think he's going to be able to showcase what he's done. Obviously, Stephon Diggs is gone. That's a lot of targets, a lot of receptions, and a lot of yards vacant, right? And I went and looked at the depth chart. It's pretty bare bones, to be completely honest with you. At least on the receiving aspect of things. I mean, they've got Adam Thielen. He missed some games last year. He's obviously going to take a bulk of those 93 targets that are going to be vacant from Stephon Diggs. Thielen only had 48 targets last year. I'd be shocked if he's anywhere south of 115 targets this season. He's going to be a target hog. We know that. The defenses know that, which is why I think some of these other guys can definitely, benefit from that as well. And I think Davis is going to be one of those guys. You look at Tajay Sharp, he had 35 targets last year, 25 receptions, 329 yards, 4 touchdowns. So nothing spectacular, nothing crazy. Got in, did the job, did what he needed to do kind of as that role player. I don't know how to say this guy's first name. Olabisi Johnson. Thanks. He had 45 targets, 31 receptions, 294 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then Chad Beebe, 3 targets, 2 receptions, 70 yards, no touchdowns. So it's one of those things where down past Thielen, to me, I think Sharp and Johnson, they kind of have that role there, right? They've been in the offense. They understand that. I think they have the advantage, obviously, with the type of offseason that we're having. But really, Davis can come in, make a name for him in camp, assuming things progress as we hope, make a name for himself in camp, show what he can do in preseason games, start to make his way onto the field, right, and start making some plays. He's definitely going to be a special teams guy that I hope that they get him involved in that aspect. He definitely can do some punt returns. He didn't do it a whole lot at A&M because they had Aniyah Smith, who was a guy he was a freshman, very, very fast guy. So Davis wasn't expected to do it a whole lot, but he's capable of doing it. He can definitely do the special teams. I think they get him on the field in that way. But he's such a versatile player that I think Minnesota, with the loss of Diggs and then just I would say the lack of depth at receivers, and it's not to knock the talent that's there. It's just a bunch of players filling the role is ultimately what it's coming down to. So really hoping Davis gets that role. And he actually has not even been drafted at all, right, in the Trade Addicts League. And we're almost to the 5th round. Actually, we might be in the 5th round now. Now we're close to it, but either way, he hasn't been drafted yet, and that's about what I would expect. In my home league, he actually went undrafted, and we have a 7th round. We also have IDP players, so that's why it's a little bit longer, different aspect to it, but he actually went undrafted. So he's definitely someone that you can get in your very late round, or even potentially take that chance, wait, go pick him up on waivers, and, again, stash him. I think he can make a name for himself this season because of the receivers that are there. I think as long as he's given that opportunity, he comes in, and he's a hard worker. I mean, we've seen the films with the footwork king. He's out there working, seems like almost every day. Obviously, and I will say this, obviously I have a little bit of bias behind him, right? A&M. But I do try and still keep an open mind to it, open to situations. And I just think it's there. I think the opportunity is there for him. I know what he can do. I've seen it for years and years, even with poor quarterback play. And Kirk Cousins is a much better quarterback than Kellen Mond will ever be. So I'm excited, man. I like Davis a lot, obviously. He's got the abilities. We just got to see it on the field, and we got to see him get that opportunity. But he's definitely a name to keep an eye on. And that's the thing, though, with wide receivers. There's just so many out there. The biggest piece is going to be, what does the depth of your league look like? If it's a shallow roster, he's really not a guy to take that chance on, to be completely honest with you. But if you have deep, deep rosters, why not, right? Get him in the final round, even if it's the final pick of the final round, whatever, or pick him up on free agents. He's a guy to stash. He's a guy to keep an eye on throughout the season and years to come.
I agree 100%. I like the pick. You know what I'm saying? I like it a lot because I think that the difference is with Davis is going to be able to play the special teams like you mentioned, right? That's going to get him on the football field. And that to me is something that I really, really like about him, is because he's got the speed in order to – that's how you see the football field, right? That's how Percy Harvin saw the football field, right? Percy Harvin wasn't really a go-to receiver. I mean, he really never was in the future, but he got plays, he got the ball in his hands because he was able to be a capable returner. Now, the flip side of it, the guy that I'm going to talk about is Bryan Edwards. Look, I know this guy is going in the late second, right? In our mock, he went 210 overall. Where did he go in your draft, Stoops?
What would you say?
Brian Edwards.
He went. Well, keep talking, and because I got to find him. I got to scroll through and find him. But I'll
third
find
round, 17th overall pick, 81st overall. He was taken back-to-back picks with him and Lynn Bowden. I love this pick. Okay, you got a number for me, Stoops?
208.
Okay, so let me start by saying this first. Okay, there's guys that went ahead of him in our mock: Ayuk, Dylan, Laviska. I'm gonna even go on. I'm gonna be a little bit bold here. I would draft him ahead of Ruggs as well. That's just me personally because I like this spot, right? Ruggs is a gadget guy. Ruggs is going to get the ball. Ruggs, they're going to let him see the ball, but he's not going to be a target hog the way Brian Edwards is, 6'3", 215. If you look back, I saw this interesting stat on Twitter. Third-round receivers over the last few years. 2019, we had McLaren. 2018, we had Chark and Godwin. 2016, we had Diggs. 2014, we had Landry. Some really good fantasy output, guys right now in the league. The one thing that I love about Edwards, he's a 4-year starter. You know what I mean? He played for 4 years. You talked him up a lot on this show several times. So this is the big thing. The Raiders can cut Tyra Williams after the season with absolutely zero dead money, and they will save $11 million. He's also underproduced last year. He had 42 catches, 651 yards, and 6 touchdowns in 14 games. Zay Jones' contract's up after this year. Zay Jones is not a very good receiver. Let's just go ahead and throw him out of the equation. Hunter Renfrow is there. Hunter Renfrow is coming off the injury. Even if he sees some of the targets, yes. Brian Edwards is not a today guy. I think Brian Edwards is the number 1 receiver for the Las Vegas Raiders next year, hands down. I think Williams is gone. All right, so let's go through some of the stats. Last year, 71 catches, 816 yards, 6 touchdowns. You love it, right? You know what I'm saying? The year before that, he averaged about 4 more yards per catch. That doesn't really play a factor into me. You don't know what happened with the offense. You're not exactly sure what was going on there, right? So 32 first down catches, 5 touchdowns of over 21 yards, okay? Brian Edwards, for some reason, has this stigma around him that he's not a fast guy. He's not a guy that can burn you. And no, he's not as fast as some of the other guys in this draft. And he's not even going to be the fastest guy on his team, probably the 4th or 5th. You got Ruggs there. You got some of these other guys. But 5 touchdowns over 21 yards, that alone to me shows playmaking ability. 27% of his catches last year went for 14 or more yards. Mm-hmm. You like that as well. The Raiders threw the ball 523 times in 2019. I'm not crazy to think that number goes up even higher. The Broncos, they upgraded the weapons on their offense, right? The Chiefs, well, we know they're the Chiefs. The Chargers are making moves as well. I think the Chargers might not be as good this year. It depends on what's going on with Herbert, Tyrod Taylor, et cetera, but they still have weapons. This offense is, and of course, the ever evolving league that we're in, where you're throwing the ball, 40, 50 times a game right now. You know what I'm saying? It's a different game, as you mentioned earlier. But the fact of the matter is this is a guy that I think is going to produce. Last year, every single game that he played in, he had 5 or more catches. He had one game, obviously, against Vanderbilt, 14 catches, 139, and a touchdown. But he had over 50 yards in every single one of those games that I just mentioned, except for 2. So you only had one game where he had 1 catch for 7 yards, which is an anomaly. It's crazy weird. Okay, and then you had another game where he had 6 catches for 37 yards. But look at the rest of the games. 9 for 90, 14, 139, 8 for 83, 7 for 78. That's double-digit fantasy points. And yes, we're talking about college, but that's going to transition. Okay, we're talking next level NFL pros. This guy is going to be good. Even if you go back a season to his 2018 season, he had a really solid year that year as well. This guy's got talent. This guy is going to be a very good NFL guy. And I'm telling you, like I said, Ayuk, Dylan, Laviska, even Ruggs, there's a lot of talent that is going ahead of him that I don't think is going to produce. We talked about we like Laviska, right? The landing spot is nice, but the quarterback situation is sketchy. So it's sketchy a little bit in Las Vegas. I like Carr more than most. If Carr doesn't run this year, he's probably gone, right? The Raiders are going to go draft them a quarterback. But again, Bryan Edwards is going to be that guy where they draft that quarterback. He's going to throw to this. He's going to throw to Edwards. Tyra Williams is gone after this year. He's been, unless he goes out there and breaks out and has a phenomenal season, it's still $11 million in cap money that they can free up by getting rid of him. I like what I saw out of Bryan Edwards. The tape is nice. Again, 4-year starter, 234 catches, 3,045 yards. He averaged 13 yards a catch, 22 touchdowns. You can't help but like it, right? He even seven punt returns last year as well. You know what I mean? So he sees the field. He's going to see the field. This might not be a year one, like we talked about. These aren't guys that might not produce year one. But at the same time, Tyra Williams, again, like I talked about, 14 games. He struggled to see the field. I think I was looking at Tyra Williams' stats from last year. He had a couple games where he had like 2 and 3 catches in the game. He wasn't even producing at all. That's a lot of money on your football field not to produce. So for me, I think if you look at the pecking order here, Bryan Edwards walks into this team maybe behind Williams. I think he's ahead of Ruggs as far as targets are going to be, especially in the red zone as well. 6'3", big target compared to Ruggs, who's not as big. Okay, Hunter Renfrow, he's recovering from the injury. Yeah, he's got the Rappaport there. I understand that. But there's Zay Jones, Limbo. And Limbo is going to be a gadget guy. I think Edwards can come in and maybe have 30 or 40 catches year one. Very easily. You know what I'm saying? And if he does that, you're getting a producer in the bottom half of round 2. I like Edwards. He's a little bit higher. He's not exactly a sleeper per se, but I think that he's not getting near enough credit as I think he should be in the drafts right now.
I think a lot of it just comes down to how the season ended for him, where he missed the games with injury. So he's kind of out of people's minds, I guess, right? You know, because that's how it is. So for example, and I'm not trying to jump to the Devy aspect, but it's like when Justin Ross broke out, everyone was talking about him. No one was talking about T. Higgins because Ross is the one that came out and broke out and everything. So it's one of those things where it's Edwards, you know, with the injuries at the end of the season, he just wasn't there. He wasn't visible. So people moved on and started talking about someone else. Yep. I think that's a big reason to it. But Edwards is a stud. I think I'm on board with you. I think he's going to be, not this year, right? But I think he's going to be the focal point of that receiver core there at some point. I love Edwards, love him.
And the thing about it is like, you know, it's not this year. Look, right? You know what I mean? We're not saying this year, but at the same time, I mean, Tyra Williams to me is not a guy that's consistent. He's not a guy that's always, you know, he's always been there. You know what I mean? He's 12 games started last year, 10 the year before. He did 15, 12. He did start some season, but at the same time, this guy is not, his stats have gone down every year. 1,000 in 2016, 728 in 2017, 2018, 653. Again, his stats are trickling down. He's getting the little wear and tear on his body. Yeah, he's still a little bit young, but I'm just saying Bryan Edwards is going to be that guy moving forward, like I said. And like I said, there's guys going ahead of him that doesn't make any sense to me, and it doesn't, you know, kind of resonate with me. So I would definitely take Bryan Edwards in that high second round. That's just my opinion. I wouldn't hate that. You're not going to get him in the third round. You know what I'm saying? We talk about that here. If you want a guy, you've got to get him in your rookie draft. You know, we don't have the snake order. You're picking here, and that's what you're picking every single round. So get Bryan Edwards if you can in that second round and be happy with the stats that he's producing, okay? All right, folks, do us a favor. Head on over to expandtheboxscore.com to check out all the tools that Stoops and I use on a week-to-week basis. Head on over to Twitter. Give them a follow at XTBBoxScore. Give Stoops a follow at Stoops1990. Give myself a follow at RickyValera_. Give the show a follow at The Devy Delight. And thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.
See y'all later.